My first book was in third past. My new book is in first present. How'd I do that? I don't know. Just kidding, I know. Let's talk about that torturing process. First, hit you with some knowledge. So, first person. It's all about I and me. You're in the head of the MC. That rhymed. I didn't even mean to. So, for example, it's like, I killed the dragon like a boss. That's first person. Third person is all about the he and she, depending on what point of view you're in. For example, she rode the unicorn over the rainbow. That's third person. For past tense, everything has already happened. You guessed it, in the past. For example, she raised the wand and blurted out a spell. Present tense, everything is happening right this second. So in contrast for the other one, I raise my wand and blurt out a spell. It's happening right that minute. So I literally went from third past to first present, which are complete opposites. I don't know why I did this to myself. So for my first book, which was in third past, I chose that because that's what I read a lot of. That came very natural to me. Third person past is very much like telling a story, and I just really enjoyed it. I'm really grateful that I chose that for my first book. It's fairly easy to write and fairly easy to figure out your writing style within it. And after doing some research, I figured out how to do a very close POV with third person. But a problem with third past is it allowed me to get off the hook with not knowing my main character very well. I didn't know her as well as I should, and it created quite a few problems in my book, mostly in how to figure out her voice and how to translate it in third person. And for me, as a first-time writer with that book, I wasn't able to achieve that very well. I do think I have a voice as I write, but my main character's voice was very soft. It was there, and I kind of figured it out as I did my final drafts. But it let me get away with not having that strong of a voice. There are really good examples of people having amazing voice while writing third person, but for me, it was a scapegoat. It let me get away with not having that voice. But overall, I loved writing in third past. It was very natural. It was what I really loved to read, as I've said. So going to my next book, I was like, easy. I'll use third past. I already know how to do it. I've already line edited in it. I know how to show emotion, all that stuff in third past. Well, my second book is very different from my first. Very different in many different ways. And so third past just didn't sound good when I wrote it, and it wasn't what I wanted. And so I did some research into why you should choose each past, present, first, third, second. And I realized that I had an unreliable narrator on my hands, and I had a book that was very intimate and with a lot of emotions and a lot of internal conflict. So that told me I needed first person. And I was okay with that. I was like, okay, I can do first person. But then I started writing it, and I realized there wasn't the immediacy for the emotional impact that I needed for this book. So then I really cried because I realized I needed to do present tense, and I'd never written present tense before. So the first thing I did was I read a whole ton of books with first person present. Make sure you're choosing the right one for the book that you're writing. It's tricky. There's a lot of resources out there. Maybe I'll make a video on it. But there's very distinct differences that you get from each one of those choices. So choose it deliberately, and once you've chosen it, then you gotta go all in like I did. Not that I didn't throw a few tantrums. My critique partners were so over me. They're like, every single day I was like, I hate first person present. I hate it. It felt so gross and weird. And the hardest part for me was that it felt so intimate. And third past, or just third in general, it allows you to have a little bit step away from your main character. But first, you're in their head. You can't step away from them. You're stuck with this main character and their voice. Sometimes that voice may come naturally to you as you start writing, and then sometimes you're like me and you're a convert from third person, and it just feels way too intimate, like way too intimate with like a stranger. I really struggled with it at the beginning, but I do know a way how to overcome that. You just gotta write in it. It took me about 30,000 words until I felt comfortable with first person and until I understood how to write in it. It just takes time. You're doing something new. If you picked up a baseball bat and you were normally right-handed and you switched to your left hand, you're gonna be a little awkward with it. You still know how to play baseball, like you still know how to write, but it's gonna be a little weird. And I feel like that is exactly what it was. Is I was right-handed with my little third passed, and I loved it, and I got really good at it, and I practiced for years with my old book. And then I changed to my left hand, and suddenly I was expecting myself to hit home runs still, and I couldn't even hit the ball. It was really hard, and I felt like I should know this. I've already written a book. I should know how to write. But it feels so uncomfortable, and it does. And it will until you practice enough. Voice was also really hard for me when I switched over. Like I said before, I got away with not having a super strong voice in third pass. It was one of the downfalls, I think, of my book. So, now that I've admitted that, this book, I knew that I needed to have a strong voice. And I knew my character a lot better this time around. But it was still really hard for me. My main character thinks very differently than I do. She is very dark, and she has a lot of self-loathing and a lot of issues and anxiety. And that was parts of me, definitely, but ones that I usually hide and like shove way down deep. So I wasn't used to accessing or even feeling those thoughts very much. So what really helped me was music. I stumbled upon, she's a new artist, and I'm obsessed. Her name is Billie Eilish, and I'll link the video that I first found of her below. But that song is my main character. Like, I just felt it to my very core. So that music really helped inspire me and helped me figure out that voice. And most importantly, it got me into the mood to write her voice. Voice isn't something that you learn to write. Voice is something that you learn to feel. And how I learned to feel was a little bit of a Pavlov experience, because every time that I put her songs on and a few other songs of my track list, it got me in the mood, and it helped me reach those parts of myself that were her, and also to help empathize with parts of her that I didn't understand. And that's when the voice started coming to me, and she started reacting to things and thinking things that I would have never thought. And that's when I realized, like, the voice clicked. But that wasn't until around 30,000 words. Something that I really enjoyed about changing into first person was how much I was in my main character's head to know their goals and their motivations. It was a lot easier to state them because I was in her head already and her thoughts around things. And I feel like it really helped focus my scenes a lot more. But on the other side, as a negative, it's harder to describe things in first person. You have to have a reason for your main character to point out things. They don't just walk in a room and go, "Oh, I've been in this room 1,000 times before, but let me explain every single thing, including the atmosphere, even though I've been in this for forever." No, it's the same old room that they've been in, so why would they point out the entire room for the reader? So you have to be a lot trickier, and you have to really think through why they would point out things. And a trick I used, which you can also use in third, but really helped me as I was diving into first person, was using the senses. What?
I brought this to you.
Oh my goodness, can I have it?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I love it. He's the sweetest. Do some goddess of nature vibes. Actually works with my shirt. Alright, we'll tuck this behind here later where I have to frame it. Next is one of the problems I ran into going into first person is I felt like I was writing very much a blow by blow. And I was using a lot of sentences that started with I or my, and it was very repetitive, and it felt almost like I was writing in my journal for a little bit, and it just was awkward. But so what? It's your first draft. It's the first time you've written first, or maybe you're just coming back to first, but it's your first time. Remember the left-handed batter? Like, it's new and you're just practicing. So what gives if it sounds like a robot for the first 10,000 words? You got to figure out somehow, and you might as well figure out in your book where you're doing some work. I also found first person felt a lot more juvenile to me, and it felt like that until I learned the voice. But even now, it just reads more juvenile, and like I'm reading someone's diary, and I think it will take several drafts in light editing to get it away from that feel. First person's tricky. You think it would be easy because you're like, well, it's just like I'll write like I'm that person. Yeah, no. First person's hard. This is where reading first person really came into play and really helped me. Is it helped me get a feel for how first person is supposed to sound. And a lot of people do it wrong, and that's why it's really important to read really good books that are written in first person and to just keep practicing. So, in conclusion, the biggest suggestions I have for someone, maybe you, who is switching from different tenses and different POVs is to practice. Just practice. Write those words. It's gonna feel weird. It's gonna feel really weird, and it's okay. And as you practice, I also recommend reading. Read a lot. Read. I write YA, so I specifically read YA first persons and present tense, since that's what I was also using. Changing tenses is like learning a new skill. Yes, it's still writing, but it's awkward. So read so you learn from experts, and write so you can practice for yourself. With those two things down, you can immerse yourself into that point of view and tense. The more you immerse yourself, the better it will sound as you write, and the better it will feel as you write. And you kind of feel like a bad writer, like you're starting all over again, but you'll get it down, and it's going to be okay. All point of views, except for second, are good. And all tenses are good. It depends on what you want for your book, and make sure you're not being stubborn and just sticking with the one that you're comfortable with. Sometimes we have to get out of our comfort zone to create something really good. So if you're switching tenses, or if you're thinking about it, good luck. It's hard, but it's totally doable, and it's worth it. So happy writing! Also, don't forget to enter the May giveaway. It's in the Rafflecopter link down below in the description.